Hello students, welcome to La Excellence. Welcome to our 8th session of Weekly Magazine, where we'll be focusing from 16th April to 22nd April 2017. This week there are very important areas, especially from geography, where there is high possibility that a question can be asked in prelims, and also there may be a question about this in mains. So let's see what are these important areas with respect to this particular week. The first one is actually with respect to the essay, where we'll be focusing on women in the changing world of work, planet 50:50 by 2030. Here, when we are talking about women, and there is a word 50:50, planet 50:50. What is the meaning of this? It is trying to say that there should be equality, gender equality in all forms. It shouldn't be only with respect to population, but it can be with respect to education, it can be with respect to maternal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, anything. So it's up to you. Whenever we talk about 50:50, it can be political equality as well. So try to ensure that from different perspectives point of view, you're going to talk about this particular essay. Even if you are writing after prelims, just ensure that this women area, children area, disaster management, right, elections, these are very important areas, especially when it comes to last week's where we spoke about the global hunger index or human development happiness index. Any indices whenever we speak, those are all very important for our preparation. This is the reason I keep telling repeatedly that guys, please ensure that you will be working on these specific aspects of essay rather than wasting your time in unnecessary topics, right? So after this, I'll take the first major issue which can be asked in both prelims and mains. That is actually with respect to the sandy desert or erosion of beaches in Puducherry. For this, the notes is actually giving you whatever I explain now, but I will try to explain clearly what exactly is happening at Puducherry. Right? So let's actually see what is happening there. Here you can actually see the beach of Puducherry, right? So here you can see that there are some black rocks which are present here. Before 1986, this was not the scenario in Puducherry. Actually, this beach was completely covered by sand. Now this has been replaced with rock boulders. What actually happened and how it happened, what is the impact of this, and now the government has again planned to remove these and bring back the sand. So let us see what exactly has actually happened one after the other. As I already told you, from 1986 or till 1986, the beach was very good. There was no problem at all. During this time, if I actually take this as a coastline, or if I say this as the beach, and here you have water, right? So whenever erosion or something used to happen in the beach, you should understand that in Bay of Bengal, due to monsoonal shift, the winds also changes its direction. Once, that is for 9 months, you can actually see that the wind movement is usually in this direction, or I would say that deposition of sand is northward for 9 months, right? And during the monsoonal season, it will be southward for 3 months. That is, the deposition will be southward. During this 9-month period, usually 0.6 million cubic meters of sand is deposited in this region. Whereas when we actually see at the southern side, it's only 0.1 million cubic meters. Now what is actually happening? Sand, whichever was accumulated in the southern boundary, was actually drifted towards the north. So there used to be erosion in the north. At the same time, there used to be deposition. So because of this continuous process, the beach was maintained in a proper way. But what actually happened was, when you actually look, they wanted to form a harbor, natural harbor. Due to this, what they made, they actually tried to create some form of structures like this. Due to this, what happened? The sand which has to be transferred to the north was accumulated here. So you call this to be sand accumulation, right? Whereas here, the sand started eroding. So that is, the new place started eroding. Here, beach erosion started, and here, accumulation started. Due to this erosion, when it entered near Puducherry and other places, actually what happened, you actually saw that sand erosion started, and even it entered near the city walls. It came closer to the city. You can actually see that the roads, whichever was closer to the sea, all those became weaker. So because of this, the government actually went and they started depositing the rock boulders. As I told you, the government deposited the rock boulders just to ensure that the erosion doesn't take place. But this rock boulders also started getting eroded soon. And natural sandbars earlier, whichever was present in this region, it used to be eroded and again filled by the movement of these waves. As this was happening continuously, this protected beach erosion. But now the sandbars are not there, nothing is there, because of which we usually see that erosion has increased. And this boulders, to some extent it's good, but we have also seen that regularly it needs to be filled. Some people say that you need some mountains to be broken and you have to put it continuously to ensure that the erosion reduces. Now what the government has done is very simple thing, that it is trying to again bring back what we are actually calling it to be a sandy beach rather than focusing upon the boulders. What exactly does that mean? It is trying to say that you have a harbor like this, right? So now again you will have some wedges which will be created, which will try to ensure that the sand movement to the north is successful. If this can be done successfully, then it is expected that the beach erosion will be reduced, right? So it is just a thought process and they have started doing it. Because of this, high possibility there can be a question. UPSC may ask you, what are the benefits of a beach? You should know that beaches protects us from cyclones and tsunamis. They prevents our groundwater from becoming saline. They support livelihood of fishermen, and they become a natural recreational space which increases tourism and also will be a livelihood for majority of the people who are actually present in this region. The second important thing that you should know is the highest sand movement in the world. One of the highest sand movement in the world usually happens. When I say sand movement, that is from south to north usually happens in this region. So because of all these factors, it's very, very important for us to look into this. Some of these are given in the magazine. So just go through that once, it's enough. Whatever I have explained you, the same thing in same language is given, right? So guys, it's very, very important for us to focus on this issue. The next most important issue is actually with respect to the great climate change. That is, there is unprecedented glacial melt in recent days. It is said that the pace at which Arctic and Antarctic is melting today, you will expect the sea surface level to rise by 60 meters, and if this happens, there would be flooding in the low-lying areas, right? So what are these effects on India? When we see East Coast is mostly vulnerable mainly because it's a submergence coast, and you have seawater intrusions which will usually happen, and this increases salinity of the soil, and then flooding of low-lying areas, intensive storms are expected to be a regular features. So what exactly should be done? The government should actually focus on coastal regulation zone, which will actually help us to mitigate the effects of rising sea level, where you need to ensure that some sort of barricades or some sort of natural walls are constructed. And then protect the vulnerable districts. First, you should identify the vulnerable and the most vulnerable districts and communities which rely on the coastal ecosystems and the sea for their livelihood, especially the fishermen, by providing alternative livelihood opportunities. And then regional agreements related to refugees from climate effects need to be initiated at the international level. You should be remembering that whenever we talk about refugees, please try to understand that refugees are the one who move out because of the fear of death caused because of political unrest, religion, ethnicity, caste or anything. But environmentally, if something happens and if people move out of their region, they are not given the refugee status. Many people are actually fighting for this particular right. So this is what we are actually talking. Regional agreements related to refugees from climate effects need to be initiated at the international level. The next important issue is actually with respect to Australia wants to be part of the Malabar Exercises. Earlier it was only between India and US. Japan joined later, and now Australia also wants to be part of this. It's very important for us to remember these exercises. Please try to ensure that you remember these factual information. The next important issue that we need to focus is actually the Lemona Agreement between US and India. Many leftists usually feel that India is actually providing base to United States, and under this Lemona Agreement, India may be allowing the US and other countries or NATO countries in future to actually come and utilize the bases near India. But one should be remembering here that the Lemona Agreement between US and India is different from US having with other countries. United States has military to military contacts with most of the countries, but this Lemona Agreement actually aims at very few things apart from the bases. UPSC, as this is a controversial issue, may ask you Indo-US relationship with respect to Lemona specifically. So here you should actually remember that it gives access to both countries, especially for the purpose of refueling and replenishing. That is, whenever the US navies are present near India, they can actually come and go for refueling of the navies, or if they want to purchase any goods, they can actually take. Even now this is happening, but what happens today is that lot of money and time is usually wasted in the entire procedure. With this agreement, it is expected that it will fasten the process both for India and United States. The next important thing is that in this agreement, we will be focusing on port calls. That is, whenever it is necessary, we can actually go to the nearest port. There will be joint exercises between India and US. There will be training, humanitarian assistance, and during disaster management, how one needs to act. All this will be taken care. If there is anything else that needs to be included as part of Lemona, then the agreement says that it should be taken case by case basis, right? So, however, this is not a basing agreement. As I have told you, there won't be any US bases present on Indian soil. So please ensure that you are going through this carefully once. Then the other issue which may be asked or may not be asked, I feel rarely there is a possibility that a question can come on this, but if at all it comes, what should be written is also important from mains point of view, not from prelims. That is actually with respect to red light or beacons being removed on the vehicles. Earlier, there used to be the central and state government agencies which used to say these offices and these ministers can actually get this red beacons, because of which they can usually move quickly in the traffic and all. From May 1st, it is expected that it would be removed only for emergency services such as ambulances, fire trucks and police cars. This will be permitted. Right? So it's very important to look into this. And the use of this will be a blue colored one from now on. For this, the central government has to actually amend the Central Motor Vehicle Rules of 1989. This is not only the central government's or Modi's idea, but even the Supreme Court in its judgment with respect to Abhay Singh versus Union of India, it has actually termed that it is a menace. And they said that it symbolizes power, and there is stark distinction between those who are allowed to use it and those who are not. That is, there was no proper guidelines. So it showed that if I have this, I have power. And Supreme Court also said that there is nothing of this sort seen anywhere in the world, right? As I told you, least possibility you can get a question on this, but if at all you get, what points to be written is given here. The next important issue is actually with respect to the human-animal conflict. You might have seen that the wild animals are actually entering into the habitats and the people are actually killing them. Why exactly is this happening? So in mains, they may actually ask a question about this. So some points that you need to know with respect to this is, first thing is about the habitat loss and fragmentation, or we can also call it the loss, degradation and fragmentation of many wildlife habitats. That is, once there is degradation, these animals, they enter into our area. The second thing is, when there is habitat loss and fragmentation, usually in those areas, if agriculture and other things flourish, then usually we see that elephants, they enter into these regions, especially in southern India. And then we also see that there is substantial recovery of the dwindling populations of certain breeds of species. Because of government's efforts, things like black buck and nilgai are coming back. When this actually increases, the habitat space is not enough. So they also enter into human habitations. Then you have land use change outside forest areas, where with increasing irrigation and other things, the elephants, as I already told you, they get attracted and they also come closer. And adverse climatic events where there are drought conditions in the forest will also make them to come towards kennels, and which also forces them to enter into the human habitations. But the biggest problem is that when they enter, the crowd, they usually try to kill them. So this is the problem. So there should be some measures that should be taken by the forest department to ensure community development or community awareness is being given to those people where these animals are moving or surrounding the forest, so that whenever anything of this sort happens, they quickly intimate it to the forest department rather than taking into their hands and killing these animals, right? So community awareness is also very, very important when we talk about this. Again, least possibility, but if you get a question, what are the points that you need to write should be seen. Guys, whenever I say high possibility, that means please try to ensure that you practice on those areas. And whenever I say least possibility, but try to remember, at least know some points with respect to that. So in exam, if at all they come, you will be able to write these points at least. Then from economy point of view, high possibility you can get a question about fiscal responsibility and budget management. I have already told you in economic survey that the economic survey was pointing out at FRBM Act, which they say it is old and it needs new things and we have to consider new factors as well. The NK Singh committee actually recommended some of the stringent measures to ensure that there is control over central and state government spending. So some of the major recommendations, if you actually see in this, to maintain 3% target of fiscal deficit till 2019-20, they have given exceptions as well. That is during national security or war, calamities of national proportions, severe collapse of agriculture, far-reaching structural reforms in the economy, fall in real output growth by 300 BPS below average for 4 successive quarters. During all these, you can actually not follow the stringent measures. else this needs to be maintained. Last time we changed the FRBM with respect to the global financial crisis. So something of these exceptions are also important. This is very, very important from prelims point of view. Then fiscal and revenue deficit, which should be brought down to 2.5% and 0.8% of GDP respectively by 2023. High possibility that they may ask you a question about these facts, or they may say, write about the recent NK Singh committee's recommendation on FRBM Act directly. So please be prepared. FRBM is always important. They kept on asking about FRBM even till 2010-11. So please ensure that you are going through this carefully. Then if we actually look, they also say that the public debt as a proportion to GDP shall be reduced to 60% by 2023 from around 68% at present. A new debt and fiscal responsibility law shall be enacted with a fiscal council with independent experts. That is, you should have a new independent body to look into this. It suggested the setting up of fiscal council, an independent body which will be tasked with monitoring the government's fiscal announcements for any given year. The panel's report also says that the focus of policymakers should be on reducing primary deficit rather than the fiscal deficit. That is, as I have already told you, you should understand the primary deficit where you are paying the loan that you are taking for the interest payments. So this is very, very important for you. They say that focus should be on reducing primary deficit rather than the fiscal deficit. So they may change this statement and they may give you by saying that the focus should be on fiscal deficit rather than on primary deficit. So please be careful. Then they say the escape clause targets can be deviated by 0.5% if there are extraordinary circumstances, and I have showed you these circumstances already. Guys, economy point of view, this is very, very important. Government, if it agrees, if it accepts this, then no doubt there will be a question on this for sure. So it's very, very important for you to look at this. I spent time in reading out every line, whichever is easy to understand, just to ensure that you are also reading them. Because sometimes students come to us with the magazine and they ask us, so these are the additional points given. Is it required for us to read? That is the reason whenever in the video I spend time on these particular things, then it becomes important. So just ensure that you are going through this carefully. The next important issue which can be asked in exam is actually with respect to India's first successfully launched satellite, that is Aryabhatta, which was launched with the help of Russian rocket on 19th April 42 years ago, that is on 1975. Because of the Technology Day celebrations, they may ask you. Every year this will be celebrated, but sometimes it will be highlighted, so that becomes important for us. Looking back at first Indian space baby. That is, from this today our field has space has actually achieved lot of things, and this was possible with this small beginning. Some important information with respect to this is Aryabhatta is the first Indian spacecraft that was also built in the country. So it was not only the successful one, it was also the first one built in the country, named after 5th century astronomer. And the experimental spacecraft, it did not stay for a long time. It was only for 6 months, but still it is an important one for India. This kick-started the Indian capacity. And then what was the use of Aryabhatta? They may ask you this question. When was it launched? And the second one is, what was it launched for? To study distant celestial bodies that emit X-rays, sun and Earth's ionosphere. Very, very important for us to look at this. It was not for any purpose to study about India or geological survey or something. It was mainly aimed at studying the distant celestial bodies, especially the rays that are emitted by sun and also whatever is there in the Earth's ionosphere. ISRO, which has built nearly 90 bigger and far more sophisticated spacecraft since then, actually observes this every year as Aryabhatta Day or Technology Day. Two things can be asked, guys. So when do we celebrate Aryabhatta Day? One is April 19, 1975, or they may ask you, so the satellite Aryabhatta was launched on April 19, 1975. They may change the year, so please be careful. And the second important thing they may ask you is the second statement, it was actually launched to study celestial bodies that emit X-rays, sun and earth's ionosphere. So this also they can vary, just be careful, right? So these are some of the important things that we need to focus. And the last one is about the case study that you all have to focus. So guys, I hope it will be beneficial. Please focus mostly on those areas which I have told it's very important from both prelims and mains point of view. If you can actually make proper notes of this, or if you can read this magazine itself, it's more than enough. My suggestion to you is just ensure that in last 15 days you are revising them carefully. Whatever is happening now is very important. If you see the entire portion we are covering in only 1 hour of 1 month, but when it comes to March, April, May, we are spending every week 1.5 hours, because we know that it's very important for you to focus at this time from prelims point of view. Most of the questions you will see whatever has happened here. Atal Pension Yojana, I have already said, but still I am telling again that Atal Pension Yojana, there was some change made for the subscription. They also said that the spouse should get money after the person dies as well. When this modification was made in 2016, they have asked a question, and if you see when this modification was made, it was also made just some 5 to 6 months before exam. So because of this, I keep telling you again and again, guys, please ensure that you are going through these areas as much as possible, so that in exam high possibility questions you will be able to answer with clarity, right? Thank you guys. Thanks for watching.